Welcome to Conversations with Laurel, everyone. I am your host, Laurel McHargue, and today I have a fun author with you. His name is R.L. Akers, and we are going to talk about his book, Escape from Overtwixt. But before we get to your book, R.L., in your bio, and I always read authors' bios before I interview them, um, you say something about you believe that every person has an interesting story to tell except for one person. And you specifically put that in your bio. And so I want to know about that one person. No names, obviously, but who's this one person who really doesn't have a story to tell? Because I think we might all know one.
Well, to be fair, I think what it says in the bio is even that one person who tried hard to convince me otherwise. Um,
Uh,
I worked
oh,
right out of grad school. I worked for a time for a nonprofit, working with homeless and working with families in need and so forth, and feeding programs and all that. And but in particular, there were a number of guys living long term there in the facility where I worked, and so I'd have lunch with them. And I was single at the time, so I'd give them rides sometimes, and that was part of it. Was very formative for me to reinforce what I already believed, but hadn't really seen for myself, which was that yes, every person has an interesting story, a fascinating story, including homeless people. Wow, imagine that. They're humans, right?
yeah.
And but this one guy, he just and he was doing well with recovery, but he just uh, was convinced there was nothing interesting about his life. He tried so hard to convince me, and apparently to hear him tell it, he'd go home and just stare at the wall at the end of the day. So I never did, and that may have just been a matter of him not wanting to share, but I never did get a full story from him on what he was passionate about and what he enjoyed and what so forth. So I believe that he was interesting, that his story was interesting, and that what made him him was interesting. I just never managed to
Yeah.
get the details of that. So
Yeah. No, well, it made me think of the people who think they have a story to tell and you're just waiting for them to finish what
and that's the
but anyway.
execution.
Yeah, yeah. Anyway, how does a techie business guy get into writing fiction? Because you're a
Oh,
techie business guy, right?
uh,
Well, now you're
I,
an author.
I suppose, yeah. I did go to business school, but mostly worked, as I say, I worked for a time in the nonprofit world before I got back into using my actual degree from undergrad of computer programming. Um, but I don't know if in spite of is the right word, but we all have different itches that we need to scratch. The technical side is one of those, but it's all creativity. And that's another thing. I think everybody's creative in different ways, but I think we all have a spark of some kind of creativity in us. For me, it needed an outlet in writing stories. And certainly I didn't have that much outlet for writing creativity, or writing creatively in the sense of making up stories in the technical world. So I needed that in the storytelling world, I guess, fantasy
Yeah.
and science fiction and murder mysteries. So
So you're a Renaissance man. Go ahead, say it. Own it.
yeah, I'm not going that far, but I appreciate you saying so.
So we're gonna talk today about book two of your series, Escape from Overtwixt. So would you give us a little nutshell version of book one? Because I read book two.
Okay. Interesting. Yes. So, Overtwixt, a series, maybe even just a universe of different stories that you can jump into at different times without reading previous ones. This is a little unusual for you to start on this one, but Overtwixt is a magical in-between world, between different alternate dimensions, if you will. Humans being our world being one of those. And the way the first book starts is that four kids who were based very intentionally on my four children are traveling through the airport in Atlanta with their parents, and they sort of accidentally go through the wrong gate, and they end up in this magical world. And of course, the bridge behind them gets destroyed before their parents come through, before they can get back, and so now they get sucked into this struggle against this the Vizier. He's the evil overlord that's kind of started taking over these floating islands connected by bridges, and they've got to be part of the solution. He's trying to tear people apart from one another. He's trying to, create distrust. He is creating distrust. And so they have to bring people back together, rebuild bridges, and take down the evil. And
I
so they get partway there, a couple of missteps, and that's the end of the first book. And I guess you picked up with the second book.
picked up with the second one because this is the one that your publicist sent me. But you're right. You can read this or these independently, and then want to read the others to maybe fill in some blanks. But you have the different types of bridges in here. So many different types of bridges between these floating islands. And t talk a little bit about how the bridges relate to the four children,
Mm, interesting.
if you would.
The four children. So certainly, again, this concept of needing to rebuild the bridges between the different bridges are very unique to the cultures because each of the floating islands belongs to a different culture, a different, again, humans are one of them. Hewland is their floating island.
Yeah.
So certainly, as the kids explore further in, they find some that have been destroyed, some that will ultimately need to be rebuilt, some that they have to cross over despite, the enemy gargoyle-like creatures that are guarding over the bridges. But yeah, they're all a little bit different. Things that sometimes bridges even that we wouldn't think of as bridges. Water vortexes or portals. Magical portals to other worlds. So
Yeah. And battles. There are battles
there are battles.
all over the place. Awesome battles. And so there are a lot of lessons in here, right? That the children learn along the way or learned before, like Nocton. He wants to be powerful and respected. And the guide, who is, we're going to talk a little bit about the guide later, but
Okay.
the guide basically saying that evil will always corrupt, always.
Can't just dabble.
Cecily recognizes that it's the necklace, it's the enchanted necklace that makes her special. And of course, this makes her really sad, right? Because she wants to be special. Amelie deals with pride and ego all the time. And little Ewan, the knight who rides horses. Oh my gosh, he is so adorable. And he, had one of the necklaces also, but without it, he thought he was awesome, you know, but it was, he realizes that it was the necklace that makes him. And these lessons that the children learn, you're not preachy at all, which is great, which is I love. So how biographical are these things that these children deal with to your own children?
Funny, I realize now as we're talking about this, I didn't put this in this book. I did have to add a note at the beginning of the first book to make clear, listen, these characters are based on what I love about my kids, based upon, their good qualities and talents and interests and abilities and their loyalty to one another. Um, the struggles that they have are, in my mind, a lot more general to all humans, or in some cases specific to, people of their ages. So no, it's not meant to be too biographical in terms of my own kids' struggles. Didn't want to reveal too much about them.
Right, because you do
And
talk. Oh, go ahead.
yeah. Oh no, and you mentioned it not being preachy. It couldn't be because I wrote it for them originally. I wanted them to just have fun with it. But yeah,
Eh,
to have some good lessons in there too.
Yeah, absolutely. So can I read a little passage and
Sure.
then talk about it? All right, on page 67. So um, Nocton is talking with the guide, all right? And he's wanting to know why the guide didn't tell him something, okay? And the guide says, would that have made any difference? And Nocton hesitates. I don't know. And the guide smiled sadly and says, much of what I say is ignored. I'm afraid it's the fate of most young men and women to ignore wisdom, then acquire it only through the experience of personal suffering. I wish it were not so, but I have learned to speak only when my wisdom is desired, and to speak not at all when it serves no purpose. Is that not all parents' dilemma?
Mm. It is. And as much as I can write that into that character, too often I still haven't figured that out. Too often I still try to dish out that advice. But But yeah,
I mean, I read that. And again, a lot of what's in here, I think, can relate to a lot of people. And, I read that and I'm like, oh my gosh, how do I keep my mouth shut, when I'm not asked? I'm a new grandmother now.
oh,
And
congratulations.
and I believe that my son and his wife are being the perfect parents. And they're doing everything right. And that's how I'm going to move forward with being a grandmother, if I can. But it's tough, isn't it?
It is. It is.
There are
But
times, I look back and there are times when I've apologized to my children for things that I've said to them in the past when they were young and growing. And, sometimes you just, it's hard. It's
it
hard
is.
not saying things. Hmm. So, do your children read your stories on their own, or do you read these to them as you're writing them? Because I think it says this is YA. I see this as like a bedtime read.
Mm.
I could absolutely see this as a bedtime read for younger children. What are your thoughts on that?
Certainly, and I've even said all along, it's a great story. It's accessible to everybody regardless of age. Obviously, the reading level has to have a certain minimum. We usually market it as 12 and up, but strong younger readers can get there. But parents, there's no content in here that's objectionable. So parents, especially parents that do voices, can read these books with their kids. When I first wrote it, when I first started it, I don't always make wise decisions when I start my writing. I have to fix stuff later. But when I started, I said I'm going to make the kids a little older in the story than my kids are, so that by the time I'm done and I can read it to them, they're at that age. So of course in the book, Ewan is 5, and then Nocton, the oldest, is 15, and so I spent about a year writing what ended up being the two different books, the first two books there. And so I was much thicker. It was too big for a young adult audience. But under the Christmas tree that year, and they had no idea I was working on this. I had not done anything young adult up to that point. And so there it was under the tree. And of course, it makes you feel special. Somebody wrote something about you. And so yeah, we started reading it together. My son, 15-year-old, quickly grew disenchanted with the pace at which we were moving. And I want a copy to read on my own. So he blew through it. He's a big reader. And but the others we continued through as a bedtime read for a number of months after that until we got done. So
Yeah. And so the dynamic between Nocturne and Amelie, um, Nocturne's older, right?
he is, yep.
And having to kind of obey his younger sister. Is that a dynamic that actually happens in your household?
No, not really.
I
But
can't imagine.
of course, they're both out of the house now and in college, but
Oh,
I liked the idea of, the first not being the first, the oldest not being the first. And partly too, it was, I developed these 4 roles that the kids pick based upon their personalities and interests. And plus her name, that was a nickname I'd given her from the beginning, Empress. And then
Empress.
my younger daughter, it was play on her name. And my younger daughter, Princess. So, but Lore Master is my oldest. He is a reader, and the minutia he can recall is amazing. And I don't even say that it kind of sounds like a backhanded compliment, but it's not. I mean, it's amazing what he can tell me about things that I never knew or completely forgot. And then of course the bravery of my young one. So the different roles fit them. And so that's where, the story, but of course the lore master can't be the ruler. So there was a lot of things that just kind of came together and worked well for the story. So
Yeah. Is your oldest a writer as well?
does some, he's more on the film side. And so film and history is what he's working towards degrees in. And yeah,
Awesome.
I mean, all of my kids are multi-talented and they get that from their mom very much as well.
Oh
Um,
yeah. Oh yeah. That's yeah. Yeah. You Renaissance man saying that they got that from their mom. But they did. I'm sure they did. I'm
they did.
absolutely sure they did. You have it in the back. And oh, by the way, how did you find your artist, Jesse
Uh,
Lewis?
Actually, through my kids. The right as I was starting writing this book, I thought, okay, I got to have some illustrations, reference book in the back. And my two oldest at the time, yes, my two oldest at the time were taking art lessons, drawing lessons from a local artist. And so, yeah, so we started with I wanted to have sketches of all the creatures in the back. It turned into a 40-page
Yeah,
reference
yeah,
book.
yeah. Awesome.
And and then the first time we tested the book with readers, with my kids as well as others, they said, "Well, I want to see those pictures in the book." So then we started, and then it just exploded from there. And I kept going back to him saying, "Okay, now I need this. Now I need that. Now I need more action poses. Now I need this one." So there's another 40 or so illustrations, some of them from the back, some of them original, that go through the book. And that's kind of become the standard for the whole series, is that all the novels, there's 5 novels at this point, all the novels will have about 40 of these charcoal sketches in the book. And then the reference book that you showed at the beginning there, that you showed at first at the back of the book, it keeps evolving is the best way I can say it. And that's Nocton, my eldest son's character. He created that reference book. It's all handwritten in ink.
Oh wow.
And yep.
His writing is beautiful.
And so it
Wow.
gets crossed out, as he realizes this isn't true, or he puts in a new sketch or an insert. So this book is, of course, still fairly new, early in the series. So there's some open spaces, but as it gets along, it gets pretty stuffed with more information and more inserts of new creatures as they discover them. So,
And it's fun because it's the sketches they're rough. They're rough and they're
yes,
fast and they give an impression, but they still allow someone looking at it to fill in the blanks.
yep, very
And
intentionally.
yeah, no, I think that's absolutely wonderful and really embellishes it. So in the glossary of people, places, things, index of the characters, you have so many kinds of men, blank
Mhm.
men, besides human.
Right.
How do you keep track?
Well, it is systematic. So somewhere in the and in the ancient history trilogy of the series, we delve more into some of the Greek mythology kind of tie-ins, but because it is set 3,000 years earlier. But from the beginning, I pictured this as infinite, right? We're just one reality out of an infinite number of dimensions. And of course, I have a hard time just kind of dreaming stuff up. I have to have a system, right? And so this idea that every race was half and half of two other races, right? So you think about mermaids, and there's a lot of races as you've seen that are recognizable,
Okay.
like mermaids.
Yeah,
Top
yeah,
half of a
yeah,
of a of a human, and in my story, it's the bottom half of a dolphin, essentially.
yeah,
Um, or a centaur is the top half of a human, the bottom half of a horse,
yeah,
roughly speaking.
yeah.
Well, a lot of that in Greek mythology, you see that kind of that standard hold. It's half and half of whatever. Well, so that became my system. So everything works. I think binomial is the right term. You keep introducing new types of creatures, and you get half and half of this hybrids that just keep building. So I'm not sure how well that answers your question, but I kept picturing these different half and half hybrids, and then I just had to name them. So
And so then, as far as physically keeping
yes,
track of them, spreadsheet,
I do have spreadsheets.
3 by 5 cards, what's your physical system for seeing it all? Because it's a
Spreadsheet,
huge world,
yeah,
universe.
yeah, right. And I want to keep. I think it was Tolkien that always said, always draw or always paint or depict I don't remember this exact wording, the horizon. And if you want to go, visit that horizon, great, but keep picturing the next horizon beyond, because that's how you keep you know the reader engaged in this large world that you're building. So yes, I will probably only ever examine a small fraction of what's there, but it does keep getting bigger. So spreadsheet for sure. And I did at one point have a poster that I got printed up that had the relationship lines, and it was just for me. It was on my wall. I'm looking over here because it used to be on that wall. It's gone now. I had to put something else up, but yeah, at some point, and I hope this happens with readers too, at some point, the exposure, the repeated exposure to certain kinds of creatures with their different personalities and accents and characteristics starts to just click until you don't have to look it up anymore. So plus Latin roots for some of the race names and so forth.
Right, right. You said so you don't uh do you dream? Do you not dream these characters up? Do you remember your dreams?
Every once in a while. And certainly dreams do bring a degree of inspiration for certain wacky ideas at times.
Yeah,
But
yeah. I dream very vividly, and a lot of my
mm,
characters come to me in the form of dreams, and some scenes come to me too, and it's remarkable. I mean,
mm,
so do you believe you have a special muse or more than one muse to guide you along the way?
not especially. I do. It is interesting. I do pray oftentimes before writing, especially in this story because it was for my kids and because there were specific lessons I wanted them to learn. I always felt, and I might have even said that in the acknowledgments, but I prayed to God very frequently through writing this, um, just for help. And it's interesting some of the themes that I didn't set out to, like again, this idea of the beautiful diversity of all these different races. I wasn't I didn't have an axe to grind. I wasn't setting out with that particular message. But it's interesting how it came, and I do give credit to God for bringing that, into the story. And I think just as I tried to, I asked for help to write the story that needed to be written, because I do think that's a message that needs to be repeated right now. That people that look different, act different, even in some, I mean, some of these people in this, they have made mistakes, they have done awful things, but they're still worthy of respect and help, and you know, again, trying to build the bridges
Mm.
between the peoples that have been
Yeah,
torn down. So that
yeah.
became a theme that I've really leaned into as I've continued to develop the worlds, um, and had a lot of fun with. So again, I think it's something that kids need to hear. I think it's something that adults need to hear. So
Absolutely. I totally agree with you. You have an epilogue in this one in which Cecily wants to go back, wants to stay there, uh, because she feels special in the other world, and maybe not at home. Is that is that something you talk about with your children? How do you children know that they're special? How do we make our children feel special? Talk about being special and
mm,
how important that is to all of us. I mean, I want to
right,
feel special. You want to feel special.
right.
Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, and Cecily, as you mentioned, she is based on my third child, the ultimate middle child, right?
Yeah.
She became the focus for a lot of that discussion about what it means to be special. And early on, again, I think it's in the first book, they're talking to the guide, and the guide basically says, I need you four. Only you four have what it takes to help us defeat this evil vizier. And Amelie says, why? What makes us so special? And the guide says something that I very truly believe, that you are very special, just like everybody else, right? And so there's this tricky, we are special, and I think that's a weakness sometimes. I mean, I'm not picking on anything in particular, but sometimes in young adult fiction, of focusing so much on something that makes this person better special than
Mhm.
everybody else. And whatever, every story is different. Every story's got different. But what I wanted to focus in on is absolutely, you four kids are so special because you're unique. And there are things that only you are either able to do or in a position to do. I think that's a part of being special, is
Right.
being in a unique position to do something. But don't forget that everybody else is also special in their ways. And your special doesn't make you more important, better, whatever. So, um,
And the importance of coming together and being special together and using your special skills because you can't generally tackle huge problems alone.
yes, exactly. Yeah. So Cecily, and it's interesting getting back to your earlier question about read alouds and how the kids read it. After I wrote all this, I thought, well, gosh, I really need to do younger versions for my little kids because they're not there yet. They're not to that reading level. So, for my youngest, I ended up making a picture book because at that point we had so many wonderful illustrations. So that was fun for him, and it was just fun too to try to repackage that same information without breaking and making it different. but repackage it in a way that he could understand it for himself reading. And the chapter book for the grade school girl, Cecily, and that became the theme that really came out again is I'm not special. Nobody, there's nothing special about me, I'm only my oldest sister. She's beautiful. She's popular. My brother, my oldest brother, he knows everything. He reads a lot. He's smart. My youngest brother is just fun and cute and funny. And I'm nothing. And it says right from the beginning. There's a write up right from the beginning, this is what she thought, but she was wrong. And this is the story of how she learned that.
Yeah.
And part of it is you are special to the people that love you. You are completely irreplaceable to the people who love you.
Yeah.
And it's more than just that, but that's part of it. So,
I can totally relate to her. I am the fourth of five girls
no kidding.
in my family, and my three older sisters, growing up, gorgeous boyfriends. I was the freckly faced little, you know, whatever. No one would ever love me. And then my baby sister, long blonde hair, big blue eyes, sweet as can be. I never felt special. I never felt like anyone would ever love me.
Well, and what is it about freckles that somehow we think that that's I mean, because Cecily, same thing. I've got freckles and I've got brown eyes. And so why there's nothing pretty about me? What? I mean, where does that come
Oh,
from?
oh,
I don't know
well,
where these ideas come
yeah,
from.
yeah. Well, again, three older sisters, we would go to I grew up in the South Shore of Boston, and we would go to the beach on weekends. Seven of us in a station wagon would drive to Nantasket Beach, and my older three sisters, would tan beautifully, and I would be the one in terry cloth, hooded, covered up because I was fairer than the rest, and
Yes.
yeah, I would burn and freckle. My youngest sister tanned as well, so I'm like, how did I end up being, the most Irish of us? But I guess that's what finally I realized makes me special. Oh yeah, it's just funny. It's funny how, and sometimes things that you feel as a child, continue with you. It hard kind of hard to get over some of those things. Yeah. How about you? How about you? Where are you in this series?
Not much in it. I try not to put myself much in it. Now, Overtwixt 3, which I am currently writing,
Okay.
which skips 5 years and kind of catches up where the kids are closer to the current age again, my kids'
Okay.
current age. Um, the adults do. And so it's really, and I'm dedicating this next book to all the cousins. So I've worked them all in some ways. Some of them are going with them back to Overtwixt for the first time. Um, but of course, the adults are all like, "Oh, it's a big joke," and so they're kind of and that's another thing too that adults too often are the butt of the joke of young adult fiction, and they're either stupid or they're not paying attention or they're um, Homer Simpson, and
Absent or absent in
right.
some cases, yeah.
And so it is interesting how easy it is to play into that because you're writing from the children's perspective. So that's been a challenge for me to find the right balance of they're very fallible, but they're not idiots either. They care and they care most about one thing, and that's their kids and taking care of their kids. So that has been an interesting challenge as I'm working through this next getting to be more serious book in the series, and as they're
And
getting it. So
and the adults were once children as well, and
still are
oftentimes
in some
remember,
ways.
oftentimes still are, and oftentimes remember their childhood
Yes.
and what they went through. Yeah, I mean, kids out there, if you're listening to this, adults are really just older kids, you know, kids who've been around a little longer.
Mhm. Maturity is knowing when to be mature too,
Yeah, yeah. Good.
and when
I
to
like
not to
that.
be. So
I like that. The guide, I
yes.
love the guide. Speaks unclearly sometimes, doesn't give answers right away, lets the children find out. Again, the passage that I read,
Mhm.
not wanting to impose things. I kind of felt like, and you mentioned God before, I kind of felt like the guide is like God. Did was that in your mind?
Very much so. Very
Yeah.
much so. And two, it's in a fantasy story. It's great to have that kind of character, right? To kind of get you started and get you moving and give you your quests and help you find your identity. Also, purely from a storytelling perspective, you got to be careful, right? You can't just give everything away. There've got to be some secrets, but from the storytelling perspective. But I did think that was very fair, and that's where I landed on it, that we humans, we don't often care. We don't often want to know, right? We just want to do what we want to do. Sometimes we very much don't want to know the consequences because for me it's going to be different. You
Yeah.
know, I'm not going to have that same problem as everybody else. So, um, again, there's three other novels in the universe, totally independent stories set 3,000 years earlier. And for that, I had fun. At least in the very first book, none of the three point of view characters were human. I'm like, I'm going to write a story with no human protagonists. And then I introduced some supporting point of view characters in the second and third book of the trilogy. But the fun that I've had with that, where they all come to Overtwixt for the first time, meet the guide, it follows the same kind of pattern as they're given their three choices. Which role will you choose? And here's your quest. And the fun I was, of course, it's tricky because I don't want to be redundant. I don't want to be repetitive. So how is it different? How is it the same, but how is it different for each one of them? And how do they react to the guide? And
Yeah.
what are they looking for? So it's made for a fun, um, I don't know how to describe it. It's made for a fun kind of recurring element, as each new character comes and a way of getting to know them.
So I'm not no spoilers, no
Okay,
spoiler about the ending, but the ending was wonderful and
thank you.
surprising. So I'll just say that surprising in a really good way. So, and you
Well,
already
thank you.
told us a little bit about book three. So, do you have multiple series out there? You've got the Prometheus series, the Kings and Heroes Circus series. You've got your murder mystery, Grey Gaines series.
Yeah.
You are a prolific author. Do you have any advice to anyone thinking about writing a series? Because writing a standalone is
Mhm.
different from writing a series. So, what kind of advice would you give people interested in jumping into different worlds? And yeah,
I mean, I wouldn't necessarily recommend writing a series off the bat,
okay.
but I also ignored that same advice. This is the thing we were just talking about, right? Everybody always told me
Yeah.
write short fiction, write short stories, write short stuff. I didn't, I started a bunch of novels over the years that never finished. Then I did the NaNoWriMo. Are you familiar with it? The
Oh,
National Novel Writing
absolutely.
Month.
Yep, yep, yep. That's how I ended up writing my first novel.
It
Yep.
it works.
Yeah, it
And
does.
for anybody listening that doesn't know, it's a challenge each November to write a
50,000
40,000
words.
word manuscript, which is novel, a minimum novel length by the end of the month. And as impossible as that seems, you plan ahead, you make your notes, and then bam, you just go to it. You don't go back, you read, you don't analyze, you just write. So
No editing. Yeah.
yeah. So that first book that I did that I actually completed through NaNoWriMo turned into, as you mentioned, the Prometheus novels, the first ones I published, and I had a great deal of fun. I do like those stories. I'm not really doing anything with that universe anymore. I do look back and wish that I had, pared down even more. They're very long. So that's one of the things I've kind of worked on over the years is shortening. So again, short fiction. They're just, there's something hard about, or there's something really, I don't know. You start building a world, you want to keep using it, want to keep delving into it. But there is, there's something to be said about keeping it short and trying lots of different genres. And
That's why I do the nycmidnight.com challenges.
okay,
I don't know if you've heard of
I'm
them.
not familiar.
They have challenges year long. You pay for them anywhere from like 29 to maybe $49, depending on the length of the challenge that you're given. And for so on midnight Friday in New York, so 10 o'clock Colorado time where I am, you're put into a group and you're given a genre, a character, maybe an item to put in it, maybe a location that you have to be, and you have a certain amount of time in order to come up with a story that fits those elements. And it's international. People from all around the world do these challenges. And you submit your best work, and you don't go to over whatever the word limit is, and it can be anywhere from microfiction, 100-word short stories to like a short story contest, which I'm getting one this Friday night. They have a short story contest going
Okay.
on. It's not too late to sign up. And as you mentioned, it really forces your brain to go into different places that you never would have otherwise. And I've got two short story collections, my Dark Ebb Grim Tales collections, because for some reason my short story muse goes dark and weird and bizarre. It just does. So they're really fun. And oftentimes I'll get a genre and I'll think, oh, I don't know anything about this. I don't like this. And then I'll sleep on it overnight, at 10 p.m. when I get it. And then in the morning, I usually come up with some ideas. I always discount the first idea that I have because if I get one really quickly, I figure everybody else will get that too.
Right.
So it's a great challenge. nycmidnight.com.
Okay.
I would encourage you if you're
No,
uh,
it sounds fascinating.
yeah, yeah. And you end up getting feedback from three different readers. They
Okay.
start with you get this, through an email. You get what we think worked best, and then what we think would make the story better. So, and the feedback is incredible, and
No, that's great.
yeah, really
And
helpful.
that is another thing for sure. You got to put your stuff into people's hands to read.
Yes.
Um, I can still anything I write at this point, there's still a few people whose voices I hear in the back of my head saying, so I don't think that's Muse so much as, the devil and the angel maybe, but saying, ooh, my eyes are bleeding, too much detail. That's something a good friend said to me early on, and I hear that now. It was hard to hear, but you got to have that. You got to get outside your own head and get other people's feedback. And of course,
Yeah.
you got to treat writing like a job if that's, if you want to pursue maybe not a full-time job, but you put in the time. You set aside time. I'm going to write for an hour. You just force yourself to do it, even if you don't feel like it or it's not flowing well that day.
Yeah.
Do it anyway.
Yeah. Um, yeah. And if it's not flowing well in what you're working on, write something else. You know,
Hmm.
look at a picture, look at your hand,
Yeah.
write an
Yeah.
ode to your freckle. I think freckles are awesome now, by the way, and
Yes. Yes.
most of mine have gone away. So if that makes your little daughter feel any better, they kind of fade. They fade with age. Are there any questions? R.L. Akers, prolific author of lots of different series. Any questions that I didn't ask you that you would wish that I had asked you, or anything else you'd like to share?
You mentioned the murder mysteries. That is my other current active series, and I kind of keep jumping back and forth between them.
Okay.
Features a detective. It's very different. It's
Yeah.
not horror, it's not paranormal, but it's near there
Okay.
in terms of murder mysteries. So wrote six of those set in New York City, NYPD homicide detective, and then uh, that story arc completed. And that was some time ago. That was 7 or 8 years ago, the last one of those published. But um, recently released an anthology of that called Gray in the City. His name is Gray Gaines. He's colorblind. Here's my shtick for this character. He's colorblind. He is very sensitive to light. He's light blind. But the really interesting one is that he has uh, here. Should I try to pronounce this? I think pronounced prosopagnosia. It's an inability to recognize faces.
Oh, yes, 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 yes.
So all
Yeah.
three of these came from injuries he sustained in an attack in which his wife was murdered. And so now he's got to solve her murder, even though officially he's not allowed to have anything to do with the case. And he's got to, of course, keep doing his job, but he can't let anybody know because there's no way they let him keep being a detective. So, so that's Gray Gaines, and recently released the anthology of all of those books, and the next Gray Gaines, where he's kind of starting a whole new chapter of his life, is coming out in this next couple months. So
And that's a real thing, the inability to recognize faces. I know someone
it's
who has
crazy.
that.
Do
Yeah, it
you
is
really?
crazy. I do. It's kind of yeah, it's so unusual. The
Mhm.
our
It is.
brains. Yeah. Hmm. I
If
want to do
anything,
more.
it's a little unusual when you stop to think about this magical ability we have to just instantly recognize the familiar.
Yeah. Yeah. Hmm. I think a lot about my brain. Do you call that
I do.
metacognition? I don't know. Kind of, yeah. It's a crazy world we live in, Master Jack.
It is.
Well, R.L. Akers, this has been delightful. Listeners out there, viewers out there, these books are readable for anyone and everyone. And again, I really see this being great, like bedtime read stories for younger kids, with wonderful illustrations. And all your other series out there, which obviously I haven't read them all, but they're out there too. I will have links below, yes, to your website, rlacres.com, and your, where else would you like people to find you?
rlacres.com. Overtwixt.com is also one.
Excellent.
And any of the big booksellers should have the stuff on there too. So
All righty. Well, I think it's time for you to get back to work because you're a Renaissance man and you're but before I leave, what did you read when you were younger?
ooh, definitely the classics. Of course, Arthur Conan Doyle, Sherlock Holmes stories,
Yeah,
great
yep.
short stories.
Exactly. Yeah.
Um,
Love Sherlock Holmes. Yeah.
Absolutely. Let's see here. What else did I enjoy? Honestly, Dickens. Didn't like Oliver Twist so much, but David Copperfield, wonderful, wonderful book. And in my teen years, I got into science fiction. Uh, Big names, little names. Timothy Zahn was one of my favorites. So
All
yeah, that's
right.
what I read.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Have a wonderful rest of your life. And yeah, maybe come back and visit me again. Readers out there, the author, R.L. Akers. This series is the Overtwixt series, but check out all his other ones as well. Like and subscribe to my channel and leave us a comment or two, and we'll answer you, right?
Sounds good. Thank you very much, Laurel. I
Absolutely.
really appreciate it.
You're welcome. This was fun.
This was
Take
fun.
care. Bye-bye.